Welcome, everyone. We know it's been a busy day and everyone's transitioning, so we definitely expect people to hop on over the next couple minutes, but we really appreciate you joining us this afternoon as we present on Problem Solving Scholars, the myths and momentum of successful single mother college students. Before we jump in right into it, we wanted to talk a little bit about potential housekeeping issues. For those of you who've already been well involved in the conference, you know that mics are muted and the videos have been disabled. The session is being recorded. So if you have friends or other colleagues who haven't had a chance to watch this, it'll be available afterwards. We really tried to set this up as a conversation that you'll see as we go along the way, and we want you to be part of that conversation. And so we would really love it if you have a particular question, especially when we get into the area of resources and different programs and surveys that we've done. Please put your question in the Q&A section and we will try to address that. And then in the meantime, if just something really speaks to you as we're talking about it, maybe you are a parent yourself, or maybe you deal with this a lot on a day-to-day basis, we'd love to hear from you in the chat. Closed captioning is available for those who are interested. If you find the little CC at the bottom, just click on that, and this will be not only recorded, but closed captioned. So again, I just want to start off by thanking you for joining us. My name is Michelle Kelly Reeves, and I'm from Texas Women's University. And you'll get a more formal introduction in a moment, but several people will be talking and presenting today, including Amy O'Keefe, my colleague at TWU, and Dr. Marissa Weiss from the University of California, Davis. And so with that, I am going to share our screen. Can we see that? I'm trying to, because I can see both. Okay, awesome, very good. So what we're going to try to accomplish in a little over an hour here is threefold. The first is that we would like to talk about some higher education myths that we walk around with, especially if you're a practitioner in the field, that through some of my experiences, these successful single mothers have really challenged my thinking on. In addition, we would like to give you a wealth of resources, and that's even if you're just barely starting in a program, or you're just barely beginning to consider how you can better address the needs of your student parents, or in particular your single moms at your institution. And then finally, we really wanted to give voice to the students themselves and let them share what those lived experiences are like, because we think that that is just an incredibly valuable resource. And the reason we titled this as Problem Solving Scholars is because I think that they're an untapped resource in terms of really how to best address and take care of the needs of this population. But before we jump into that, wanted to give you a few quick facts, both about single mothers in the United States overall, and then about them in higher education. So the first is that when we're talking about single parents in the United States, we are overwhelmingly talking about single moms. Whichever literature you look at, it varies a little bit, but it hovers at between 80 and 82% of all single parents are single moms. Currently, what that means is that 23% of the children aged 18 and under are being raised by a single mom. And so that's almost 1 in 4 children right now. And what was really profound for me as I began diving into this topic is that they are considered the most financially vulnerable population over the last 5 decades. even when the United States created its poverty threshold and really began looking at that as a nation, this was part of the conversation, that this is a particularly vulnerable group. So it's really, really interesting and promising from my perspective as a higher educational professional that they are also a quietly growing student population nationally. And that's both at community colleges and at four-year institutions. So again, depending on the literature, that means a little over 2 million undergraduate students that are throughout both community college and four-year are single mothers. And that has more than doubled in the last couple of decades. And again, from a practitioner's perspective, we're always concerned about their ability to graduate within 6 years. And right now, that persistence or that retention rate sits at about 31%, which compared to when you look at the total population of about 50% is of course a number that we want to improve upon. So for me personally, that's what got me involved in the case study that I am currently working on. And so just a little bit about myself is that I am currently a doctoral student working on my PhD in higher education. And then my real job, or my full-time job, is serving as the director of the Health and Wellbeing Initiative at Texas Women's University. We're a highly diverse institution with a relatively large number of parents. And so all of that became interesting to me. And it really became interesting to me when my daughter became pregnant with Case, who is pictured here in high school. And all of a sudden I realized that I needed more information on how to help her be successful when she started college. I also want to introduce to you Anne-Marie Alford.
Hi, everybody. My name is Anne-Marie Alford. I just graduated from Texas Women's University with my Bachelor of Science in Nutrition, emphasizing in dietetics. I also just got accepted to TWU to complete my Master of Science in Nutrition alongside the dietetic internship at TWU. So short-term-ish goal is to be a dietitian. I am also a mother to my 4-year-old little boy, Ransom, who's featured in the picture. I am a first-generation college student and a non-traditional college student. I also work part-time for Health and Wellbeing Initiative on campus at Texas Women's University with Michelle. And that's a little bit about me.
Thank you, Anne-Marie.
Yes.
So as I mentioned, this became my dissertation topic, and I created it as a phenomenological case study. But what I really, really wanted to focus on is I wanted to better understand what the life experiences were for the students who were successfully doing this. So it's really easy to get focused on barriers or limitations in this population, but I wanted to focus on that 30% that's doing really well, and see if that could teach me on how I could better support their efforts. And so through this case study design, I ended up extensively interviewing 11 students via Zoom because of COVID, just like while we're all here. And we just had an extended conversation about their experiences associated with, so what does success look like to them? How do they perceive their own persistence? How are they juggling their multiple roles throughout the day? Of course, COVID came up. It would be hard for that not to come up over the last year. And then how do they manage resources, in particular time and money and childcare issues? So all of that was just talked about fluidly with this group of students. And it was an incredibly enriching experience for me, one that I'm very grateful for. But one of the overriding themes that emerged for me was that I carried around some presumptions, which I'm describing as myths today, that ran counter to their ability to be successful. And so we wanted to spend a few minutes sharing those with you. And so myth number one that we tend to carry around is, when is the right time to go to college? And a lot of this is based on data and research and public policy. So we fully recognize this, but the story that we like to tell students, and we are beginning this even in middle school now, is beginning in middle school through high school. Hey, as soon as you graduate from high school, we want you to immediately jump into college. If we're honest, we tend to be like, oh, it should probably be a 4-year university and it should be like this all-in mentality. And for this particular population, this may be a myth. What I found in many of their stories and examples is them fully recognizing some had attempted to go to college right after high school and were unsuccessful. Others fully recognized that they were not in the right headspace or life timing that would have made them successful. And so as I go through this, I do include a few quotes from students. All of the names that are used are pseudonyms. But I really liked how Raina described how she recognized when she got pregnant in high school, she had a lot going on in her personal life. She was really struggling both at home and academically. And she knew very well that that just was not the right time for her to jump into a college experience. And so for her, it was important to wait a while. Anne Marie, what do you think about this one?
I think go Raina for making that decision in high school, because for me, it was such, I had this plan that I was graduating from high school. I wanted to go to a 4-year university. I was so stuck on that because that's what you're supposed to do if you want to be successful, right? Or that's what I told myself. And there's this stigma associated that you need to go to a 4-year institution, get a degree from said institution, and go on with your life. But that's not the case. And for me, I wanted to go to that 4-year university, but I couldn't afford it. And so I went to community college, which was best decision I made. And then in the midst of that, I got pregnant. And so that's kind of Raina's position here. I was like, whoa, okay, this is not my plan. This was not my intention. What am I going to do? Everything's ruined. But it wasn't ruined. It was the best thing that ever happened to me because it made me make better decisions and better choices. So I took that break. I took a year break when I was pregnant, started back up later, one class at a time. I started back one class and I got my associate. And then after I finished my associates, I went to TWU. So I think we need to normalize more on it. It's okay to wait, especially if you don't know what you're doing or who you are. Even I think whenever you graduate high school at 18, 19, it's still such a young age. I didn't know, I'm such a different person from who I was then. And I think waiting, figuring out your life or raising your children and going back later is one of the smartest decisions you could make.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And that's actually the perfect segue into myth number 2 that emerged that tends to align with the when to go to college. It's also this implied language that we use that there's a right way to go to college. And usually in part of that story or description, we're talking about, so not only do you start right after high school, and again, sometimes we have preferential treatment. It really should be at a 4-year university. There's lots of research that talks about and even policy around it's important that these students go full time, that they don't take any breaks, that at the minimum they're registered every fall and spring, that seems to be the steadiest way for them to get a degree. And again, while there is some research on this topic, this may not be an appropriate way to communicate this to single mother college students. The quote that I included for Kay, the reason why I loved this quote is because in this short paragraph, she talks about 5 different ways that she has managed her coursework over the course of that last year, which spoke to me a common theme of needing flexibility. And I think, Anne Marie, you spoke to that just a moment ago, of that for you, it made sense to take a break. For you, it made sense to go back one class at a time. And so for an institution that's trying to serve this population, recognizing that it's not the end of the world, that they take a nonlinear path, or that they just have lots of options, and we really embrace language that encourages them to come back when it's right for them to come back, might be the way to go.
Yeah, I think we should encourage students, especially single parents, to go to college for the best way that's going to work for you, because everybody's situation it's not cookie cutter. It's not going to be the same. I'm a single parent, but my situation also looks extremely different from another single parent. And so I think we really need to advocate for taking a nonlinear path and having different options, taking longer than you need to. I had the experience of both a nonlinear and linear path, because it was a little linear at the beginning and then was nonlinear, and then it kind of transitioned back to linear because of financial aid and scholarships. So I had to become more linear towards the end of my degree. But I think it's really impressive what Kay has done. I've never taken a class or a whole semester fully online. That's incredible. But it is hard because you're having to work through all these barriers of financial aid and what classes are offered during what semesters. And I have to get it done in X amount of time because money runs out or whatever it may be. It's difficult, and I think you need to give yourself breaks, and I think you have to figure out what's best for you, so everything else around you, your kids especially, are taken care of in an appropriate way.
Very good. That segues nicely into myth number 3, which I'm really, I think, speaking to the higher ed practitioners or those of us who are working with this population, is just a gentle reminder that it's not only what we say, but how we say it that really matters. And so, as I alluded to in the beginning, a lot of the literature and a lot of the conversation related to this student population is barrier based, like, right? Like it's, oh, this is daunting. Like there's so many things they have to juggle. And I think sometimes that's a really missed opportunity to change our perspective and think more in terms of how can we connect them with resources? But I would even take it one step further. How do we see that student themselves as excellent resources, which we'll dive into here in a minute, because they are excellent resources. And sometimes our role is just helping them connect dots, and then they're going to go off and thrive. Related to that, what we say and how we say it matters. One of the surprising themes that emerged when I was talking to these students was that this sense that, of course, they don't want to be ignored at their institution, even though they're relatively a quiet population at some places, they don't want to be ignored. But on the opposite end of the spectrum, they also resented being idolized. And to me, what this spoke to is just this desire to not be considered the other. If I'm a single mother and I want to go to college, I want to feel like I belong there. And while feeling ignored or separated doesn't help me feel like I belong there, neither does being idolized or overly praised. And so I appreciated Savannah's uncomfortability with people constantly saying, oh, you're a superhero. Oh, I don't know how you do it. Oh, like these are amazing examples, because while we're complimenting that person, what we could be inadvertently also saying or not saying is that you're an anomaly. This doesn't happen very often, so we really need to put you on a pedestal. Anne Marie, what do you think of this idea?
I think, okay, so to the last point, that we're an anomaly, I think to me that says student parents aren't normalized yet. And so, which makes it really hard for student parents to want to go to college because they're going to be faced with all of these barriers, which, I mean, yes, I guess, but also we're so resourceful, and there are so many resources to help you overcome. I just graduated and I did that, and I overcame all of these barriers. And so it's so doable. And I think instead of like looking at it as these barriers, but looking at it, how are you going to attack this and be successful? I personally am a little indifferent because I haven't experienced a situation where I felt entirely different from another student because I am a student parent. Also, I feel like at Texas Women's University, we have a lot of non-traditional students. So we have people in just different areas of their life that are older and they get it, they've been there, they're going through their own challenges that are sometimes just as difficult as going to school as a student parent. But I do want to acknowledge and highlight that student parents are awesome and they are so resourceful. And so it does feel good to know that I am killing it, managing all these other things. But at the same time, I don't want to feel like I'm this different person or that I can't do certain things because I am a student parent, because we can and we have all these resources. Yeah, so I think, yeah.
That's awesome. And then the final myth that we wanted to talk about, again, is just related to our perspective as higher education professionals. What I found overwhelmingly is that all of these students managed time, money, childcare, all differently. But the common theme that was clear cut among all of them is that they were outstanding problem solvers and that they had a very keen awareness of this is the resources that I have to work with in front of me. And they were very adept and fluid and flexible in how they managed those resources. And the three dominant resources that were talked about over and over again were related to time, money, and self. And so I added this quote from Raina because she really succinctly talked about how she managed her day in terms of roles. So I work in the mornings, I study in the afternoons, I focus on my family in the evenings. And I saw a lot of that kind of conversation. That was one of the ways that these students were successfully persisting, is they were looking at their roles in terms of time. I absolutely loved this quote from Anastasia, and it was actually one of the most surprising findings for me in this study is how clearly these students saw themselves as resources, finite resources that had to be taken care of and were valuable. And I loved how she said, we have to manage our self-care because we can't be there for someone if we can't be there for ourselves. And so that was something that I just personally, as the researcher, really, really enjoyed. And then finally, I included this quote from Lux because she really reflected that part of problem solving is learning from your mistakes and being willing to keep moving forward. And so when she was managing time, money, and self, she realized she couldn't treat the in-between semesters the same way she did when she was in class. It burned her out. So she learned, she managed, and through that, she was really able to better prioritize her own self-care. Anne-Marie, what do you think about this one?
This is it. These are your resources, time, money, and self. This is how you're going to figure out how you're going to do it all. The biggest thing for me is taking care of yourself, because I firmly believe everything else around you is a reflection of you. And if you aren't taking care of yourself, it's going to be really, really hard to be successful and make all those other things thrive. So I think making sure that you are taking care of whatever that looks like with whatever time and money you have. I mean, for me right now, it's binge watching a Netflix show because that's what I can afford and that's what I have the time for at the end of the night when my son's asleep. But I think it's so important to make sure you're meeting all of those needs, and what do those look like. Making sure you're saying no to things. It's okay to say no. You don't have to do everything. You don't have to look like everybody else. And learning how to balance everything, making sure you're taken care of and that you're balancing everything else around you so you and your children are taken care of. And I think it's different for everybody.
Very good. Awesome. Well, Anne-Marie, I really enjoyed visiting with you about
Thank
this. And
you.
like I
Likewise.
said, this was been a really enriching experience. And so as we continue on with our presentation, I wanted to turn it over to Marissa to really kind of talk more specifically about who this population is and where you might be able to find them.
Oh, great. Thanks, Michelle. I didn't know also as people have questions and comments, please put them in so we can be answering them. It's okay to drop them in there as we're chatting. But yeah, if you want to go to the next one, Audrey is here with me, and it's, you might see, right, I'm currently at UC Davis, but I was at Rhode Island College for 13 years. I just started at UC Davis in June, so I have some information to share there, but also had a significant experience at Rhode Island College, which we affectionately call RIC. But that's me, and I have two people, Ruby and Rosie. Ruby is 5 and Rosie is 6, soon to be 7. And they're something else. Definitely, I was very pregnant with Rosie while defending my dissertation. So there I am. But I want to give Audrey an opportunity to introduce herself and share a bit about her journey.
Hello, everyone. My name is Audrey Valdez, and I recently graduated Rhode Island College with my bachelor's in psychology. I graduated in 2020, so not that long ago during this crazy pandemic. And the journey for getting my bachelor's degree was definitely the hardest thing I've ever done, and the longest. I started off at a community college and felt that it didn't work out. So I just transferred to RIC, but none of my classes transferred because they were in-house credits. So it was really just a pointless year at the community college. I did end up having to take summer classes because I wanted to hurry up and finish. I ended up working mostly weekends, just so that I can have Monday through Friday off and dedicate it just to classes. And then eventually I had to leave that because it was exhausting, and I ended up finding a job like on campus, that would help me out financially. And what also helped was me being on Section 8. So having that voucher also helped me out a lot financially. But it took me a little bit over 6 years to get my bachelor's degree. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Audrey. And right, it's have to put on the pedestal, but in all this time also had kids and added more kids to the family.
Yes. So that's one thing. Yes, it's kind of funny, but I started off with one child, and throughout the years another child was added, but it was through foster care, and then my nephew as well. So right now I have 4 children, all under my roof. And a support system that helped out a lot at RIC was Marissa. And we ended up starting this organization called the Student Parents Association. Unfortunately, when I graduated and Marissa left, it didn't continue. We couldn't find anyone to take over, but it was an organization, a student organization that we created to recruit more student parents, which I wasn't aware that there was so many on campus, and just create the RIC campus more of a family friendly. We did events that students were able to bring their children, because you don't really see that many children on campus. You don't really bring them around. So being able to do that, it was really good because my children were able to come and they were able to see other parents just as myself.
Yeah, thanks, Audrey. And we're both wearing our Student Parent Association attire.
Yes.
So yeah, we're going to go into some more details about what we would call SPA in a few minutes. So I'll share some thoughts about who your students are when you, because our piece is kind of about where do you start? If you're starting a program on your campus, what should you do? And I think Audrey brings up the great point about when you're looking around, you don't always know who the other student parents are, because unless someone needs to bring their children to class or you're just in a conversation about it, folks don't know that you're a parent. So some ways you can try to get a sense of who the student parents are on your campus. Our financial aid can be a really great partner. Some financial aid offices feel comfortable sharing student level data with you, and some really prefer to just send a message out themselves on your behalf to students who claim dependence on their FAFSA, or if you're in California, the DREAM Act application, and that can kind of get you started to have a sense of your population. If you happen to have family housing on your campus, partnering with them is definitely key. And at UC Davis, we have work life. Some other campuses, it's just in their human resources department, but if they're offering support for faculty and staff with children, oftentimes they also open the programs up to students with children with things like lactation or childcare grants, so they're a good partner. Graduate studies could be helpful, and your childcare centers on your campus are key if you do have one, especially if it's a lab school or one that's dedicated in some way to serving student parents. And as both Audrey and Anne-Marie mentioned, they were transfer students, and by and large, a lot of our student parents are transfers. So getting in with it's another intersecting identity. Your admissions office and then orientation. Very few schools, unfortunately, have a separate orientation just for student parents, but you can create one, and your best way to find the students when they're coming in is to include a message to all incoming students, even if you don't know which ones of them are student parents. And then the last piece in terms of data, the best way to know who your student parents are twofold. One, to have a question on the admissions application, and then to ask every time they register. So if you can lobby to have that happen on your campus, that's probably the best way for all of your data. We can go to the next piece. There you go. So it's just some very quick information. I'll just breeze through some of this. What do we know at UC Davis? Yeah, financial aid was able to share that 179 of our students claimed dependence, but it's a very different population from our overall students. Because for example, 87% of those students who claim dependence are Pell eligible, while only 36% of our overall student population. So many more low-income students who are student parents, and as Michelle mentioned earlier, especially for single parents, more financially vulnerable, a lot of responsibilities that they have to cover on their own. And we estimate that we have about 340 student parents. So again, goes to show, like Audrey was saying, you don't know who they are. And at a school like Davis, when you have 30,000 students, who are those 340? You might not be able to find them unless we're able to intentionally help folks network. And then in terms of graduate students, about 13% of our graduate students are parents, which is a little over 600. And then specifically single student parents, or single parent students, excuse me. And we have this information because it's asked on the University of California admissions application. So we know that 78 of our current students are single parents. And then I know it's a little fuzzy at the bottom about the race ethnicity breakdown. The most important takeaway there is that the percentage of underrepresented minority students who are single parents is much higher than our overall student population. For example, the African-American Black students who are single parents here is 15%, and our overall population is maybe 5%. And also to have almost half of our single parents be Hispanic, Latinx, Chicanx. So it's important to know who your students are, so you can really be reaching out to them and ensure that everyone feels welcome and comfortable, and that you're offering the services that students want. And then, as Michelle mentioned, overwhelmingly our single parents are women. And then just, right, not to put on a pedestal, but to give them kudos where it's deserved. the average GPA of our graduating single parent students is 3.364. So as I'm trying to remember the phrase that Anne Marie used, that she was killing it. Like, these students are killing it. So we're gonna keep going. Just a few quick quotes. We're actually in the middle of putting together a student parent manual, which is where we got some of these quotes. After I'm done chatting, I can put the link to our manual in the chat. But yeah, I mean, if you're a single mom, like, balancing work, school, running the household is something. And we can go to the next one. And then Joyce is a single mom on our campus. Right, a lot of people think, oh gosh, in the evenings and the weekends where they can get all their stuff done. And that's not what Joyce is experiencing, that the weekends is her time to watch her son. And Audrey, I don't know if these students' experiences ring true for you, if you have any thoughts to add.
I could call, obviously, but if it hasn't been paid in 3 years.
No, not really. You can, I pretty much had said everything where, it was just challenging, and you have to manage your time very well in order to be able to do the schooling and the house life.
Sounds good. But maybe here we can share some pieces about how we started SPA and the Facebook group and some of the events.
Well, it was actually, you sent emails. That's how it started, and I always wondered, how does she know I have a child? Because the emails felt very targeted to me. And then you said, oh, we're gonna get together at the Women's Center. It's just like something brief. So I went, and I liked, what you had to say, and Jeanette, which was your, I forgot what her position was. She worked at the Women's Center.
Yeah, she was the grad assistant.
Yes. And then, we kept on meeting over there, and more parents started to show up, and then you and we all kind of decided we should have an organization. And that's how the organization came about. And we started to recruit more parents. More parents started to come, and they were all women. So that's another thing too. We didn't really see any men. Even though there were some men on campus that were parents, but they didn't really show up. And that's just how SPA ended up becoming. So that's what we call it, SPA. But it was a really good organization. My kids loved it. I loved it. We built our own support system. Even though we graduated college, we still stay in contact, and we talk to each other, and we still have get-togethers outside of Rhode Island College.
Nice. Yeah, it was like a little family, especially the officers and the folks who came on a regular basis. Everyone knew each other's kids. Yeah, so that's funny. I didn't really think about how the email was received. That right, we at Rhode Island College, a school of like 6,000 or so undergrads. There were close to 500 students who claimed dependence. So yeah, I would send them regular messages, and then we started rolling. There were such nice events. We would always do a fall welcome. People would bring their children, and then the Halloween program was very popular, especially the last year when we did the trunk or treat. Had about 300 people roll in, which we thought was a good success. So yeah, so I'd say, one of the very key beginning things to do is, as however you can find out who your students' parents are, get in touch with them, connect with them, let them know that you're around, and then help them to connect with each other is really the key thing to do. And then as you get rolling, to establish partnerships with other departments. I happened to, at that point, I was in student activities on the Women's Center, so we had that nice collaboration. But campus recreation is usually already doing things with children. We would always get in touch with the co-op preschool. So those folks would come and be involved. So it's important not to feel like you're doing it alone, because often very few schools are lucky enough to have someone whose whole job is working with student parents. Usually it's a little piece of your larger position. So to make sure you have allies. And then we just, at UC Davis, we just finished creating a website, and that's another thing, doesn't take any money. You just need your administration to, okay, giving you some web space. And so it became a virtual hub for student parents, even though we don't have an actual center. And then, oh yes, we also, Learning for Life, some schools call it their basic needs center. At Rhode Island College, Learning for Life is much bigger. Had navigators who served as who were master's students in the School of Social Work, who really helped students navigate the college, and they were really the key partners, along with the Women's Center, in making our program at Rhode Island College run. So anything, if you have EOP or TRIO programs on your campus, can also be really great partners as well. Then I mentioned up there the family-friendly toolkit, and again, after I'm done, we can put it in the chat. It's a great way to begin. It even has a whole needs assessment already ready to go. You can just modify it if you need to for your campus and send it out to get some information about your students, and then to create an advisory board with other key departments is helpful. And then connecting with colleagues at other schools. That's how I came to join this presentation, because I connected with Amy, and we talk with colleagues from all over the country often, so you don't feel alone. These are other people who get it. Yeah, if there's anyone who is in the presentation who wants to join us in our monthly chats, we'll put my email in there, and you can get in touch with us. And then data and fundraising would be kind of the last pieces to round out your program. But yeah, I don't know. Audrey, did I miss anything, or any other thoughts about the program we were able to build?
We didn't talk about the Facebook group. So that's another thing that we created, and it was a way to communicate with other parents on Rhode Island, on the campus and off the campus. But sometimes some parents weren't able to attend our meetings, and we would give updates on things that were happening, but it was another way to also spread out events that were coming up. And then we also have, we had a connection with the co-op, which was the childcare, the preschool at Rhode Island College, and they would share things with us, and we were able to share things with them. So it was just another platform for us to get more things out to the parents.
Yeah, thanks. That's a good one. And lastly, I'll just say that, we did, that so many of our students were from the area. It was a big commuter school. So I think you need to pay attention to where your students are living. So because of that, we did a lot of, folks did a lot of good sharing on the Facebook group about, when kindergarten registration was coming up, or if there were, events in and around Providence. So folks can feel like they were part of both the campus and the larger community. And then lastly, I'll just say that it doesn't happen overnight. I'd say in building the program and getting some momentum at Rhode Island College took a good, 5 years to really feel like we were established. And then the key, as Audrey mentioned, right, I left, she left, and then COVID happened, but to always, as best you can, try to have things institutionalized, so programs continue when staffing changes, but that's it's not always easy. So with that, we can move on to Amy.
Thank you, Marissa and Audrey. I really appreciate what you both had to share, and I especially appreciate your final comment, Marissa, about the timing. I think sometimes we go to conferences and we hear all of these ideas, and it can be overwhelming, and you can feel like, how am I ever going to catch up to what all these other schools are doing. And it's because we forget to share, oh, you know what, by the way, we've been working on this for a decade, or by the way, we had all these resources to help. So I thank you for sharing that. And so at this point, now that we've learned a little bit of the research about single moms and ways that we can support them, especially Marissa has done a nice job of laying out where she is now starting a program, where I'm going to keep the ball rolling with some momentum and talk about some of the ways we support single moms through practices and programming, and some that we've done for a while. And so with that, I'd like to introduce myself and my awesome student, Kirsty. So I'm Amy O'Keefe, the Executive Director for CARE, which is a department in the Division of Student Life at Texas Women's University. So we work with parenting students, with veterans, foster care alumni. We also provide wraparound services and case management for students in financial crisis. The CARES Act has been a little bit confusing since that's also the name of our department, since we've been involved in both. That's taken up a big part of this past year. When I started graduate school, I had a toddler and a newborn, and that picture is from last week. So you can see I was in graduate school a little while ago. And with that, I want to have Kirsty introduce herself.
Hi, obviously I'm Kirsty Sumner. I apologize if you hear my toddler. She's actually here. She's sick. She's doing great, but she's here. So I am a single mom. I'm also part of that foster care alumni that we also have at TWU. I'm currently starting my senior year, so I'm almost graduated. I'm studying psychology with a minor, studying social work with a minor in psychology. And I got pregnant my first year of college. And I have not stopped going to college. I have gone through college with the newborn, toddler, everything. And so, yeah.
Thank you, Kirsty. So we're going to be talking about 4, I would call them themes or buckets of ways that we support single moms. And I also want to make a comment that I'm trying to provide services and programs, both the range from you might be just starting out and you might be an office of one and you have lots of responsibilities, to programs or services that take some time to build and more resources, so that there's a range of ideas we want to share. So I want to start with pregnant students. So on the next slide, you'll see Title IX. So before I get into all of that, Kirsty, will you share a little bit about your experience about being a pregnant student?
Yes, thank you. So like I said in my introduction, I got pregnant my freshman year of college. And I did not know what resources were available. Obviously, Amy's going to discuss about the syllabus, but when I got pregnant, there was nothing in the syllabus. I kind of had to find it on my own. But it was a good resource to have. And I took the due diligence to message my professors and be like, hey, to let you know that I'm pregnant. I'll be scheduling doctor's appointments and all that good stuff around your class times. And I will say that there were the majority of the professors that were accepting, and there were other professors that were not as accepting. And I had one professor that was like, okay, cool. Why are you telling me this? But most of the professors at TW were really accepting, and obviously the Title IX program has changed a little bit, but it really helped when I first got pregnant.
Thank you for sharing that, Kirsty. So so one of the things that we've changed, and some of this came out of, Marissa mentioned the Family Friendly Campus Toolkit. That's a free self-assessment. I can't endorse it high enough. It gave us so much. It gave us structure, and it gave us insight into what our parenting students needed. But one of the things is we had some changes in our personnel with Title IX, and also administratively where it's housed. And there's now a tighter connection between the Title IX officer and my office. So as an example, this, what you're seeing on the slide, this is a standard language that's provided to all faculty, and they are encouraged to put it in all of their syllabi. Also, you're seeing our brochure that's provided. It's on our website, but it's also provided to students and faculty and staff, letting them know that about pregnancies, accommodations, and protections under Title IX. And I want to say quickly about that photo. So I was working in that commencement when this photo happened. No one knew this student had her newborn with her. She was sound asleep underneath the student's gown. And when she turned the corner to cross the stage, it's kind of off to the side where you can't see. I saw her unzip her gown, and nurse her little one and then zip back up. And right as she crossed the stage, she kind of unzipped so everyone could just see that sweet little head. And our chancellor and president just was over the moon. The whole arena went bananas. People loved it. And I just felt like that snapshot right there, if you can have your most senior leadership understand the value and the gifts that student parents, not in a way that puts them on a pedestal, but also acknowledging what it takes. That's really forwarded a lot of our work, because it also said like that the chancellor appreciates these students. Okay. So speaking of pregnant and breastfeeding students, breastfeeding is protected under Title IX. We had tried for 10 years to make movements on having improved lactation space for students on campus. And it really wasn't until I learned about this state accolade or award called Mother Friendly Worksite that comes out from the Texas Department of Health and Human Services. That's when all the pieces started falling into place. Because to be frank, administrators like awards. So if you can find in your state some kind of award or some kind of external accreditation or an accolade, that really does help move your efforts forward by gaining partnerships outside of your area. One of the things on the slide I want to share a little bit about is the sample letter for faculty. So some of the feedback we got from students was that they just didn't know how to have these conversations with faculty. Like Kirsty is a very go-getter, extroverted student and was comfortable messaging her faculty, but not all faculty even allow students.
Gotta love Zoom. We'll give it a couple more seconds and see if Amy can unfreeze here. While she's hopping back on, I can kind of jump in and help her with this. So I know that one of the really powerful resources that the care office provides is that they really kind of help serve as that intermediate or help students engage in those conversations with faculty. So them creating that template of what that sample letter could look like for faculty really then gives students words or ways to be able to start that process and then to encourage them, because so much of Title IX is kind of student initiated and focused. And so that's just one very small, inexpensive way that you can use your services or your office as a way to provide really important resources, giving them the language and giving them the words to be able to be their own problem solvers. We wanted to include here just some pictures of the lactation rooms that we have available at the university. And again, as Amy had mentioned earlier, it all started falling into place once we found out that there was this way that Texas could recognize their efforts. And one of the ways that this became powerful and successful at the campus is that then it wasn't just an HR conversation or just a student life conversation. It was the joint conversation that lactation rooms and other services like this served and could benefit our whole community. And so I know that Amy is really proud of this space in particular because we have examples of lactation rooms on all 3 of our campuses, including our library space. And so not only just providing a space, but really providing a comfortable space and one that students really feel comfortable and safe in was critical. And that was the result of a lot of communication and then collaboration with human resources. Amy, do we have you back?
Talk about timing. Talking about collaboration. Thank you, Michelle.
No
Our
problem.
power just went out. Don't know why, but real life, it's real life, baby. So, so lactation. How about the next slide? Childcare. Okay, we're not going to spend a lot of time on childcare since there've been multiple sessions on this, but I did want to share on the next slide that even if you don't have a lot of money to put towards childcare, even if you start with something like a list of area childcare centers and what their tuition is and whether they accept state subsidies or not. I mean, that's something I have a student assistant pull together every year, and putting that on the website doesn't cost anything, just as Marissa was sharing earlier, but it does send the message that we know you have this need and we're trying to find a solution. We do now have the C Campus grant, which is phenomenal to have that, but that took a lot of time to get there. And in the meantime, we worked towards providing these other ways to support students that didn't require as many resources. And I know, Kirsty, you had something you wanted to share about childcare.
Yes, thank you. So obviously when you're in college or you're just like a parent, childcare is like one of the, needs that you need. And for me, I had my daughter. I was very fortunate. My first semester of a sophomore, I was able to do it remotely. But due to my scholarship for my second semester, I was unable to, and I was panicking. I was a single mom. I didn't really have a job at that point. And I was like, can I still go to college? I was debating whether to drop out. And then this grant came up, and now my daughter's in childcare at her daycare, which she loves. I'm able to go to school full time. I'm able to study. I'm able to work, and I'm able to, I think, in my opinion, to be a better parent, and to give her, that childcare that she has. She gets to play with other kids, and they teach her things that I don't have time for because I'm in college or because I'm working or dealing with other life stressors.
I think the other thing too that Kirsty, I can recall from that time was that when you were pregnant and you came in the office and we had conversations about how you said you'd never held a baby, you had never changed a diaper. And so having an office where you can have that conversation safely with someone and just share, like, this is stuff I need help learning about. And then of course you obviously did it. So that was amazing. Okay, next. Okay, emergency aid. Before we dive into this, I really appreciate Kirsty's perspective on this.
Thank you. So I know that emergency aid is a big topic for everyone, no matter where you are in the country. And obviously, as Amy said, I'm a pretty go-getter. I'm pretty resourceful, just due to my past experiences from my childhood and adolescence. But what I want to say is that don't also assume that a single parent or student parent has food insecurities or money insecurities or housing insecurities. Obviously a lot of us struggle with that, but not everyone does. And my thing is some people can not be turned off, but they can be like, well, why are they assuming this when it's not really happening? And I know that, I don't know where my train of thought went, but that's just what I had to say about that.
I thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate that perspective. When I work with our admissions team, I'll get this question a lot, like, how do I share about resources with students where it's almost like the staff person has a concern there's going to be a stigma. And I think it speaks directly to what Kirsty's saying, is that we don't ever want someone to feel like we're assuming that they have a food insecurity or we're making any kind of assumption about the student. We want all of our students to feel like they're having an experience that we're supporting them as a unique individual person. And so the way we talk about it is we talk about these resources like we talk about any other resource on campus, like tutoring, for example, or some other, think of what is a resource on campus that you share widely with students that you don't feel goofy about. Get in that space and then think about talking about SNAP or WIC or, any other of these resources that you might have. So with SNAP, and for those of you who aren't familiar with it, that is what used to be called the food stamps. This program now especially, I would encourage you to find ways to reach out to students because more than ever, we have increased access for college students, whether they have children or not, to receive SNAP. And if they can receive SNAP, then that will really open up their budgets to cover other expenses that are harder to find funding to cover. So for example, where it says systematic invitations, we work with our financial aid office and write a little blurb that they send out on our behalf to all of our students who are Pell eligible, encouraging them, making them aware that that SNAP is out there and they might want to apply, and inviting them to apply. And students really receive it as an invitation. So that's been positive. Okay, next. Swipe out hunger. So this is the last slide I'm going to talk about under emergency aid. I had mentioned, I think at the beginning, talking about the CARES Act, and there have been a lot of resources. And I think that's been positive because students have really needed them during the pandemic. But I also think there's been some confusion. And then students, my experience anyway, has been they're doing okay. And then all of a sudden the timeline for not allowing evictions is up. And there's not just been good communication about that, or whatever the support might have been during the pandemic, those are starting to expire. And so we're starting to see increased requests to meet with us and sort out how to help students. And so if you are thinking about food security or insecurity on your campus, I really encourage you to check out Swipe Out Hunger. This is a nonprofit organization that works with colleges and universities across the country. They do not charge you anything for their consultations and training, and they are so professional and so well done. And we actually just completed a training on how to operate a trauma-informed pantry, so that the pantry experience is positive and welcoming and is not re-traumatizing students during a time of need or crisis. So on here, you can see a list of all the different ways that you might be able to support your single parents, your single moms around issues of food. Okay, next. Okay, so family-friendly programming. So I want to begin by talking with some low-hanging fruit. What you see on this slide is a logo that our housing and res life student staff developed, and they have now shared with everyone in the university. So when they create a flyer, if the program or event is open to families, then this little symbol goes on there to make it a quick, easy way for students to know that the material's children appropriate, and then it'll be a fun event for families. There's another thing that it didn't take any money. It took a little bit of time, but once you create it, it's pretty easy to continue to update it. And this is a parent-friendly map. And what I love about a map is that is such a overt symbol of you belong here. Literally, you belong here because it's a map. And so the map is showing lactation spaces, diaper changing stations, where high chairs are, where our office is. And on the back of this map, it lists descriptions and websites of all the different ways the university supports parenting students or single parents. Anything from the summer camps that are offered, so we have a dental hygiene clinic that's open to children, where the children's section of the library is, to our family and counseling studies programs, does play therapy, all those sorts of things are listed on the back. And then we just put this map everywhere. We have it in the admissions office, we have it in financial aid, all of the offices where there's going to be traction when you're in person. And of course, then we have it on the website as well. Okay, Pioneer Quiet Backpacks. We are the pioneers, that's why it's called that. And I'm just going to be super transparent. And this is an idea I stole directly from Portland State University, so they get credit for this. But basically the concept is you have backpacks in your office that students can check out, and the backpack contains developmentally appropriate quiet toys for them to check out when they have an unexpected time on campus and they need some way to entertain their child in the moment. Okay, student organizations. So Audrey and Marissa were sharing a lot about their organization, and student organizations don't necessarily take money, but they do take a resource of time. And how they were sharing, there is an ebb and a flow when students graduate or staff leave. It can be really hard to keep it going. But I have found that Spark, which is what our organization is called, it's really important for multiple reasons that you can see on the screen. Everything from legitimizing this traditional leadership and student development experience and providing a pathway for that experience, but also for having a way that students can find each other. And I think for single moms in particular, it's very common throughout the summer that I get phone calls from single moms relocating to our area with lots of questions about childcare and where do I live and what's the experience of living there as a single parent like. And it's so great to have a group that I can connect them to immediately, because just hearing from a peer with those sorts of questions is, first of all, highly relevant. But secondly, I think it really validates you're welcome here, I'm like you, and I'm here. So I would encourage you, if you can, to have a student organization. And the next slide is one of our longtime traditions. I'm going to have Kirsty talk about it if she'd like.
Yes, thank you. So obviously the holiday gift program is kind of like what it sounds. Is you, I know at TW specifically, it's been going on for over 30 years, and it's for parents or students who are student parents. And if you make a certain amount or below, you're eligible, and then you get a sponsor, and they help you with needs. What I like most about this program is that obviously the sponsor is anonymous, so I never knew who sponsored me or my daughter, but we're able to send thank you cards. So the care office, has it set up where, we get our gifts, and then I get a thank you card, and then I get to, write my thanks and what they do, and then it gets back to the sponsor. I also know that it's helped me tremendously. Obviously my first 2 Christmases, single mom, last Christmas I was working 3 jobs just to try to provide for my daughter. And I remember that this came up, and I was like, I need a coat for my daughter. I need, basic necessities for the winter for my daughter, because I didn't have any. And I was gifted it. And then the previous year, her first Christmas, obviously you want your kid's first Christmas to be memorable. And so I got her some sensory toys from this. And, the biggest blessing about this program, it's not the gifts, but it's seeing my daughter's face when she sees everything. I think that was the greatest reward from this, and I hope this program continues on forever, because it is not only a true help, but it's just the way that the community has worked together to do this.
Thank you, Kirsty. Thank you for sharing that. So what Kirsty shared, we've heard from other students as well. And so I can't imagine losing this tradition. But one of the unanticipated outcomes of that program is what it does for faculty and staff morale. And so there are departments that this is what they do every year to celebrate the holidays, as they sponsor a student or 2, or they can donate to our eToy box and we do the shopping on their behalf. But having a way during that time of year where you know that you're contributing to one of your own students has been really a total bonus that we weren't expecting when the program started so long ago. So I don't think the tradition is going to disappear by any stretch. So don't worry, Kirsty. Okay, and the final slide is family graduation celebration. So this program, I just love this. I love holiday gift. They're probably tied for me, which would be hard to pick a favorite. But the thing that I like about family graduation celebration is twofold. One is the visibility and the opportunity for the graduating student. So in our case, it's mostly single moms and their children to have a child-friendly ceremony. And when I say child-friendly, I mean the keynote lots of times is a child, but if not, it's a person who has had a non-traditional experience. And the keynote address is under 5 minutes. So it's fantastic. The whole ceremony is under an hour. We end with beach balls and music, and we have roaming entertainment at the beginning of it. And all the kiddos, as you can see in this photo, are wearing child-sized gowns, and they get caps they get to keep, and they actually receive the diploma from the chancellor as they cross the stage. This does not replace the official university commencement, but it is a really fun event. And the other part about it that's really helpful for us is that we don't limit the number of tickets, which is really appreciated by our students for that part. But the other part of it that I think is really beneficial is that the investment our senior leadership have in it. I mean, because these kids are so cute, we have more, usually, senior level people who want to be there than we have jobs or roles for them. And so I love that because I think it keeps our single moms and our student parents in the forefront so that they are not forgotten by our most senior level people. Not that their opinion matters more than anybody else, but just that if the head of the ship is invested, that's going to make a difference for everyone else as well. So anyway, family graduation does take some resources. We do it through collaborating with people across campus. And we've even done some things like we haven't been able to do it in person for the last 2 cycles, but this upcoming year, I'm pretty confident we'll be back to in person. We have photo stations set up as you walk in, and we have departments sponsor those. So they pay us money to sponsor the photo booth, and that's how we cover the cost of the event. So that has worked out pretty well. with that, I'm going to turn it back to Michelle. I know that there was a question about sharing her dissertation research, and I really appreciate all of you being here today.
Yes, definitely. So I really appreciated the conversation. Somebody did ask about I work on my dissertation. So the plan is to defend in June next month. And then, of course, it will become publicly available. However, if there's anybody in particular who's interested in it, if you just wanted to give me your email in the chat, I can kind of put that on the list. And then once I cross the finish line in June, I can send that to you guys directly. I really appreciate everyone who has spoken today, and I hope that this has been helpful and effective for you. First, just thinking in terms of what are our perceptions of this population, because that, of course, is then going to affect our behavior. So just really kind of thinking that process through, then recognizing, do we really know who and where these students are? And recognizing that for most of us, I would say for all the panelists today, this is a portion of what they do for their full-time jobs. And that's probably the same for you guys. So how do you manage that, both in small, inexpensive ways versus more developed ways that are definitely possible even with minimal resources, if you don't mind investing the time, or if you can really get other departmental partners on board to collaborate. And then finally, I just wanted to thank all the students who were willing to share their personal experiences today. And I just want to celebrate your efforts and congratulate you on either graduating or almost graduating. You're getting close there. And so, yeah, we just really, really appreciate the time that you've provided. We want to wrap it up by reminding participants that we have our closing session today at 2:20, which is Eastern Standard Time. But in the meantime, we hope that you have a really productive afternoon, and thank you for joining us.